Welcome to Scott's Boring Life. Scott's Boring Podcast, I should say. Welcome to it. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you showed up. I showed up too. I just sounded really Canadian there, didn't I? My Canadian accent seeps through sometimes. That's okay. It's kind of like that George Carlin bit where everyone tries so hard to get rid of their accent. Why? Don't fight it. It's an interesting bit. He's like, what are you trying to say to the world? That you're from nowhere? I'm from nowhere. It's like a 40-minute bit that I just boiled down to 15 seconds. But it's really funny. You should YouTube it. George Carlin. I'm from nowhere. Try that. No promises. I'm just remembering it vaguely. But I remember liking it. So what am I doing here? I'm just getting used to talking with the headphones on. I got my equipment set up here. I am mid audiobook right now, and I'm doing it lightning fast. It's been tough, man. I just have limited time here at the studio, so I'm doing it in record time, which I think has some advantages. Like, doing it so fast, I think, there's some continuity. You get into the story a little bit more, I think. So that's an advantage, I think. Disadvantage, of course, is there's going to be some mumbles and some little fuck-ups in there. But that's okay. I only have 8 days at home before, sorry, I'm breathing into the mic, before it's time to push on. And there's lots to do other than finish this audiobook. I got up to chapter 21 before we left for Hawaii. And now I have, how many more chapters and an epilogue and an author's note, whatever. That's another 4 chapters and a few things. So that's realistically 3 days of work. That's very reasonable. So I have 8 days here at home before we leave. That's 3 days that I really have to dedicate to that. So that's it, man. I kind of wish I did it all in one shot. But that just, I didn't quite make it. That's okay. I'm going to finish it. Hawaii was cool. Hawaii is always great. I fucking get homesick. I'm a bitch like that. My life is the dream of many. And it is good. It's fun. I'm not complaining. But anyway. So off we go to Los Angeles for 2 months, and we're going to be staying at different places while we're down there. We're driving down, me, the wife, and the dog. Head down the I-5. We won't rush. Have New Year's Eve down there. That'll be cool. We're leaving Boxing Day, so we got 8 days here, a couple days at the in-laws for Christmas. So I'll be cooking up a storm for everybody there. And then the truck will be packed, and we will drive down south. I think I mentioned that I would talk about the big trip we had. It's worth talking about, but it's starting to be a little bit of distance between then and now, and I think it'd be a little contrived. I think I might have missed the opportunity to talk about that trip, the European trip and Middle East. Maybe I will later. I'm not going to do that today because I don't feel like it. What I'm going to do today is just talk a little bit. It gave me an excuse to set up my little studio here again. I have a home studio that is kind of destroyed right now because the computer went down on me. So I had to use my laptop and get it functioning the best I could. And so that's what I did today. It's got all the bits and pieces together, and it's working. And I'm getting used to talking again. And I'm going to introduce Rocked Up to you. All right, so that's what we're doing here. Is I'm going to talk a little bit more, and then I'm going to leave you with chapter 3 of Rocked Up, and the next few podcasts are going to be the whole book. So this is going to be a free audiobook. It's going to be missing Karina's parts. It's going to be missing the female perspective. It's a book that goes back and forth between the male and female perspective. You're going to hear the book from beginning to end, just the male perspective. Karina does not have time to do her section. It's reasonable. It makes sense that she doesn't put her time into that, because she's the breadwinner. She makes the moolah. She pays the mortgage. So it makes sense in our partnership that she would do that and not spend hours doing an audiobook that is not going to be a big moneymaker. It's a fun thing. So Rocked Up. But, it's worth listening to. I hope you do, because you can totally follow the story. It's mostly the male perspective anyway. And funny enough, when you listen through it, I don't even know if you'll notice that it's missing the female perspective. And when it finally comes out in audiobook format, properly is released, and if you want to listen to it again and actually hear with the female chapters inserted in there, that might be kind of interesting. Or maybe not, I don't know. Now, I'm a little talky right now. I won't do this throughout the audiobook segment here. So the next few podcasts, I will briefly say hello, or maybe not even. And so you could just listen to the whole audiobook. You could put it in your car, in your headphones, whatever, and just chapter after chapter will play in this podcast series, just as if you were listening to an audiobook. Now, in the event that you're just hopping on the Scott's Boring Podcast train right now and you haven't listened to any former episodes, you should know that there's already the first chapter is already out there. All right, so if you're listening to this, it's easy. Just go in and look at all episodes. You'll see chapter 3. Start there. This is the next chapter, and then you're rolling, man. And you'll be able to listen to the whole thing. Each chapter is about 15 to 20 minutes. So I think it's a nice little podcast amount of time. So, hang on a second here. How are you? Are you okay? ScottMcKenzie323@gmail.com. Of course, you could email me if you want to. Like I said, look, I'm not going to talk this much before every chapter. This is just today. All right. And I've learned my lesson. Don't get into this without a plan. I tried that. I had one podcast episode where I said, I'm just going to fucking turn on the mic and just talk. Well, it was fucking shit. It was complete shit. But I uploaded it anyway. So, I don't have anything I really need to talk about right now. One thing does come to mind, because that was a massive trip that I did. It'd be a shame not to talk about it at all. It was long. I guess, the one thing that keeps on coming to my mind is this restaurant we went to in Lisbon. Lisbon was fucking cool. We called it the nitty gritty pretty city. Between Karina and I, affectionately and privately, until now. A nitty gritty pretty city. So, it had an edge. People lived there. It wasn't just like more tourists than anything like Bruges in Brussels was like that. Beautiful, but it was kind of like you're in Disneyland. I mean, I think there's certainly more tourists than people who actually live there. Beautiful. Bruges is great. But Lisbon, yeah, man, it's got an edge. People living there. You could feel people having what it might be like to live there. It's rough around the edges in a way. And I want to go back to Lisbon one day, not soon. I don't fucking go anywhere for a while. You know, I just want to stay home, for crying out loud. But one day. When I think of Lisbon, there's this restaurant we went to called Cave 23. I'm pretty damn sure that's what it was called. Cave 23. And man, was it cool. We had a few really great restaurants. This one we just got lucky. It was in a part of the hotel we were at. And we're making dinner plans. I think we just arrived. We were tired. So we had talked to the concierge and said, where are we going to eat? I think we said, we'll just eat here. And he said, whoa, hey, you need reservations. And this is a big deal. It's the best restaurant in Lisbon, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh, okay. So I made reservations for the next day or the day after that. And my God, it was cool. I've never been to a Michelin star restaurant, but it was that kind of thing, I think. You know, it was 9 courses, and they're all quite small in size, but very, very rich. Yeah, I've never done that before. I'm not in a big rush to do it again, but it was a really cool experience. How much was it? I think it was 40 euros each, which ain't McDonald's, but when you think of like the nicest restaurant in Lisbon, then I can't imagine anything more extravagant. It certainly was probably the most in my experience. So 40 euros for that, yeah, not bad. And then you had an option for wine, this like whatever it is the wine that kind of paired. So they chose a wine for you, kind of thing. And one thing I fucking hate about these type of restaurants is the moment you're making the choices. I hate whenever they're trying to be a restaurant like that, but they're not. It's a bit of show. And the way you could tell is whenever you don't know, because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. When you look at the menu and what wine do I pair with, they're supposed to help you. And not make you feel like a fucking idiot. So they were good that way. And so we chose the thing where they just chose the wine for us. It was awesome. Incredible. So 9 courses, and they were young, a young staff. And you could tell that they were so into it genuinely, and they were excited to tell the presentation and the stuff that like dry ice, there was smoke, and then one was on this like cedar, tiny little cedar plank thing, and it smelled like cedar, obviously. Anyway, I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but it was a really great experience, and it's kind of cool when you have a professional wine person. I forget the word for that. You're saying it right now. Yeah, that. One of those guys. And so you had like a server who would come with food, and then the wine guy would come and talk about the wine, talk about the the grapes, where he went, and the person, that the small little farm, and the whole story of it. And by the time he actually pours it, you're just, it's this like incredible experience. And everything he says you're supposed to taste, I taste, just because of the power of suggestion, I think. But still, it was cool. And yeah. And then by the end, the last wine was one of those, like, he said it's his favorite, and they only had, it was like the last bottle or something. Really cool dude. And it was like one of those wines that at the bottom of the glass, it's like there's all kinds of shit there, and that's good, I guess. And he said that's the real stuff. It's not, like sediment, like whatever the stuff that settles to the bottom. It was really good. So so I said I wouldn't talk about the trip, and I won't, how long this is the trip, but that one restaurant called Cave 23 in Lisbon, by golly, that was cool. I'm not into going to fancy restaurants, but I'm into businesses and little enterprises that are real passion and real genuine, heartfelt effort, like in a grassroots way, and you become a part of it. So this restaurant I had, it was like that, and you can have that experience from other things other than restaurants, but it tends to be. food and drink. But yeah, it was cool. 40 euros plus the wine thing. So it wasn't the cheapest, but it wasn't ridiculous for that one-time experience. Although at the end I couldn't find my wallet, and I was like, oh my God. And I looked, it was an open kitchen, obviously, which is super cool. It's called Cave 23 because it was in a cave, which is neat. Anyway, but I couldn't find my wallet, and I'm looking around. I'm like, my God, and I could see the dishwasher back there, and I'm thinking, I'm far from home. If I can't find my wallet, and Karina's starting to get nervous too, what do you do? Like, the food, we ate it. It's like at the gas station, you fill up your tank and you can't pay. Well, what do you do? So I was getting pretty nervous, and I'm like, well, I'm looking at the dishwasher. I'm like, you know what? If I have to, I will. I'm a charming enough guy. I could probably say, hey, look, I could, work the night. I could handle that dish pit. But then I'm like, and this is all in my head, but I'm thinking, this is fucking expensive. And at the rate they probably pay the dishwasher, this is like, what, a week? Somewhere between part and full time. I'll have to be washing dishes in Lisbon in a cave, frantically looking for my wallet. I'm like, fuck. And I think that's a week. Well, that's room and board. It's an expensive hotel we're at. And even if I go and find some place else, I have that to consider. So I don't have a wallet. And if I'm paying off this bill, but then plus I have to support myself and Karina, she has expensive taste. Like, fucked. So I found my wallet, so I didn't have to uproot my life and become a dishwasher for a month. But that's what would have to happen at a fancy restaurant if you lost your wallet. But that didn't happen. But I had this big epic thing in my head. I was like looking around the restaurant, like, okay, this is going to be my place of work for a while. I could tell, that guy's probably cool. Probably drink beers with that guy. That guy's a dick. We're going to hate each other. And this whole thing just glancing around. But it didn't happen. I found my wallet. We paid and we had a great experience. Anyway, you're about to listen to Rocked Up, Chapter 3. I don't know when it's actually going to come out, so this is kind of bootleg, man. This is kind of special, I think. And like I said, I'm talking a bit now before I actually play the chapter. I hope you get into it a little bit. Give it a try. I think this chapter is only like 17 minutes. And if you haven't listened to the first chapter, just go back, listen to that one first. That one I don't talk your ear off. It's just boom, right into it. And this one comes next, and for the next however fucking many chapters it is, I don't know, 17 or something. I hope you get into it. All right? So, Chapter 3 of Rocked Up. All right, here we go. Thanks for listening. I'll check in on you throughout this series just to make sure you're okay. You're still hanging in there. All right? Maybe we'll talk about the book a little bit. Maybe we won't. But I promise it won't be this long drivel. If you get into it, you don't need me talking for 20 minutes between the chapter. Might break the spell. But I need to talk today, all right? Hey, sometimes you just need to talk. It was nice. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. ScottMcKenzie323@gmail.com. This is Chapter 3 of Rocked Up. Thanks a lot. Hope you enjoy it. Talk to you later.
You want me to count 3 or something like a movie?
It's not unusual for Ramsey Records to request I come in for a meeting at its head office just outside of Hollywood. The building is a 20-story circular high-rise that was built in the early 80s. At the very top of the building, large metal letters spell out Ramsey Records. I've been on the roof, and I've seen the rusted old framing holding up that massive sign. And sometimes I imagine what would happen if those heavy letters got loose and tumbled to the ground. I wonder what would happen if I kicked them. As usual, I just sit there at the meeting without saying a word, while a team of people shout back and forth about this or that.
We need more poolside shots. Sex tape.
He should have an appearance at a global warming protest that's so hot right now. For fuck's sakes, we need more talk shows. Has Corden replied yet? How about some shots at him leaving that sex club? Madeline's, is it? So I sit there and eat the sushi while they play with my life like I'm just a product. No wonder it's increasingly rare that I'm invited to these nasty brainstorm meetings. It's also rare that Ronald would attend. But there's Ronald at the opposite end of the table, with his elbows on the desk and his hands making a triangle shape just under his chin. He looks stoic, seemingly unimpressed with what's happening, but it's also his default face. Okay, that's enough for today, he announces. I want Brad's face on the cover of every magazine when his album comes out this spring. There's still a few months, so don't exhaust your resources. Stay focused on the tour. Only play your games in the cities where he's playing. Brad, stick around. I need to talk to you. Shit. The crew shuffles out of the room, exchanging looks that only exist in the competitive corporate world. They look like wild animals in nice clothing, completely willing to kill the person they're holding the door open for if it suited them. I prefer when they ignore me. Whenever they did speak to me through their smiling teeth, I knew I was in trouble. How's a duet with Lindsay? Ronald asked from across the long boardroom table covered with a mountain range of sushi. It's strange being so far away, and I anxiously do a quick drum roll with my chopsticks before setting them down. Good. I feel like I made a real connection. I shout at him. Ronald smiles and stands up, flattening the tie over his rounded belly, slowly walking towards me as he speaks to the ceiling. Look, he says. I'm sorry about Nick. I know you guys got along. It's not about who threw the chicken, and I don't care about the lady's car. It's his attitude. Nobody wants to work with the guy. He threw the chicken. It's never about the chicken. I sit there looking up at Ronald standing next to me, and we share an awkward pause that seems to last for days. The room is so quiet, I could actually hear him breathe. I hear you still won't work with the songwriters. That's okay. He finally goes on. As long as you're writing hits, you won't have any problems from me. It's just we haven't heard anything from you lately, and we need that album ready for the spring. We need a summer hit. A summer love song. Okay, I'll call it Summer Love Song, I answer sarcastically. I like it, Ronald answers, choosing to ignore my sarcasm. He sits down next to me and says earnestly, we don't need another one of your avant-garde projects. I don't care if those hipster magazines love it. It doesn't pay the bills. That shit doesn't pay for your fancy condo in the hills. What the fuck did you call that album again? Stompbox, I answer. Stompbox was an album completely comprised of analog guitar effect pedals, swirling and driving ambient sounds for an hour and a half. By the end of the track, I had every pedal on. I'm not usually into smoking pot, but after that session, you could barely see the instruments through the smoke. Yeah, that fucking shit. Enough with that, he says. Now look, it wasn't easy, but you don't have a single flight on this tour, so you're in for quite a road trip. This means you'll be living on the bus for over 2 months. I expect big things on this tour, really big things. The venues are getting bigger, and we're selling out faster. You need to step up to the plate. When you get back, straight to the studio to get that album ready for the spring. So I need you to be ready for that too. I told you the day I met you, over 10 years ago, there will be times when it's hard and you will want to give up. I'm just reminding you. It's not going to be easy over the next few months, I promise you that. I need to know that you won't give up. I need to know you'll see this through. This is what I do. You have nothing to be worried about, I assure him. He clears his throat, avoiding my eyes. We have a new temporary bass player for you. She'll be with you for the tour while we look for someone to fill the position full-time. She? I question. What the hell is he talking about? Ronald looks uncharacteristically defeated. She wants to be a musician, he says quietly, almost wincing. I think she's caught up with some romantic idea of what life is like on the road. There's nothing like 2 months on the bus during the winter to get it out of your system. He opens it and sticks his head out into the hall, bellowing, Come on in. Then he turns to look at me. Brad Snyder, meet your new bass player. Lael Ramsey steps into the boardroom. No one says a word. Ronald smiles, looking back and forth between Lael and I. What the fuck is going on? I know I should say something. And it has to be the right thing, or I'm dead. This is his fucking daughter. I didn't even realize you played bass, I managed to say to her. Her fake, awkward smile breaks for a moment and she opens her mouth to say something. She's a fantastic player, Ronald says, cutting her off. And I think she'll be a great part of the team. She'll have her own bus to travel on and her own security. Other than sound check and the actual shows, she won't be bothering you or Twitch. Switch. I correct him on the name of my bandmate. Sure. Look, this is really a non-issue. Lael is very capable, and there's no reason you, Mitch, Calvi, and her can't have a professional, working relationship. You guys will travel together as usual, and Lael will meet you at the venues at the appropriate times. Ronald looks at Lael and puts his hand on her shoulder. Lael gives him an awkward smile and nervously whispers, Yay. Good, he says with a nod, happy with her fake enthusiasm. I think we're done here. Lael, darling, I know you have somewhere to be. I won't keep you. Your assistant will let you know when it's the first rehearsal. You'll see Brad, the other guy, and Stitch there, and I'm sure you'll have a great time. I exchange a look with Lael, trying to let her know everything's okay. She returns my gaze with fear in her eyes. I can't blame her. Perhaps I look the same. Ronald ushers her out the door, closing it behind her. And once again, Ronald and I are alone in the boardroom. He sits next to me with a grave expression. I've invested more in you than any other artist in my company's history. I'm not going to say I own you. That wouldn't be right. And I'm not even going to say that you owe me anything. You've held up your part of the deal quite well. But, young man, I want you to know. I'll take it all away if you let anything happen to Lael. You, or anyone else from the crew, are not to socialize with her, okay? This is a working relationship. In fact, I've told Lael that you're basically her boss. And I have eyes and ears everywhere, so don't fuck this up. She doesn't belong on the road. I don't want that life for her. It just has to be this way for now. Remember, it has nothing to do with the chicken. It just has to be this way for now. And with that, he smiles, stands up, and heads out of the room, leaving me alone at the big boardroom table. I can only sit there, dumbfounded, trying to make sense of this. I don't like the situation being forced on me. The boss's daughter following in her own bus? For 2 months? Nepotism at its finest, or perhaps at its worst. Hey, says Lael, her voice soft and concerned. I look up to see her poking her head in from the door. Hey, I tell her. Not sure what else to say. Shit, this is awkward. Look, she says. I just asked my father for an audition. I didn't want it to be like this. She seems embarrassed, and I have no doubt she's telling me the truth. This is 100% her father's doing. It has nothing to do with her. Are you my ride home? I ask with a sigh. She says wearingly. Well, all right then. Take me home, I say, giving her a small smile. And together we walk out of the miserable office building. I like being in her tiny car. It's very much an extension of her, at least the her I know so far. There's teal everywhere and it smells like coconut sunscreen. We glide away without a sound. She's concentrating on driving through traffic, so I take the opportunity to stare at her profile without being noticed. Her long, blue-green hair is pushed back by her sunglasses, completely revealing her face and neck. She has a profile that's hard not to stare at. Perfect nose, full lips, young, sun-kissed skin. But she does not look like the next bass player of and then. Like I said, this wasn't my idea, Lael says after a while, keeping her eyes on the road. And I know you're upset about it. I'll go to my dad's office tomorrow and I'll tell him I won't do it. I don't have the heart or energy to respond. I'm suddenly so tired of dealing with things like this, so I put my head back against the seat rest and watch the city pass by. When I first met her, she was a kid, used to stare at me with hearts in her eyes. She's still a little bit younger than me, but miles away from that kid that used to hang around me so shyly. Her words are still hanging in the air, prompting me to say something. Good idea. Talk to your dad tomorrow. Call it off, I tell her, still looking out the window. Now, it's my words that hang in the air. I was probably a little harsh, but it needs to be said. I'm not taking the boss's daughter on tour when there's someone out there better suited for the gig. We strive to be one of the most badass bands in the world, and Lael is too pretty. I will, she says. Like I said, this wasn't my idea. You don't have to worry about taking the boss's daughter on your entire tour. Not that I need taken care of, but it's a stupid idea and you don't have to worry about me hanging around. Lael's tone is that of a teenager's towards an authority figure. I give her a side eye and don't entertain her with a response. We're not far from my old stomping grounds. The theater that I used to call home is just minutes away. I haven't been there for a while, and with Mr. Robson having passed away, it feels like it's time to walk down memory lane and say goodbye to my dear friend. Do you mind taking a little detour? I ask. Where? She asks with a little attitude. The theater, where it all started. We can do that, she says in a calm, sober voice, her expression softening as she puts on the turn signal. We don't speak on the way to the theater. It's been ages since I've been on the street in the afternoon. And it looks different with the sun high in the sky. It's quiet too. This part of the city comes alive at night and sleeps during the day. Lael's able to park on the street almost directly in front of the theater's main doors. Hungry? I ask. Starving, she answers. We cross the street and get a couple Delalo burgers. To my surprise, the couple working there are as lively as ever. They remember me immediately, offering me their condolences for my loss. Lael seems less than enthusiastic about the greasy white bag they hand to her, but I can tell she's charmed by the hard-working couple. Burgers in hand, we cross the street to the theater. The moment I enter the foyer, the smells instantly bring me back to my late childhood. Then, stepping into the theater, I see it. Mr. Robson's sound booth, looking painfully empty. Flowers laid out over his equipment. I run my hands over the flowers that were obviously left there by the crew, but I know Mr. Robson would have hated them near his equipment. I let out a deep breath and close my eyes. I can hear his voice in the depths of my mind. Did they let you out of your cage? Are you going to be okay? Lael asks. I meet her eyes, warm and filled with concern. I make a promise to myself not to break down again. I will be. Come on over here. These are the best seats in the house. I direct her to the seats where I always sat with Mr. Robson. We sit down and look at the beautiful, empty stage, save an old friend, Ross Duncan, who's on a ladder fixing some lights, the sound of his tools clanking filling the room. We eat in silence for a while, though my mind can't seem to focus on one thing. That's the best thing I've ever tasted, Lael says with a little laugh. She scrunches up the empty burger wrapper and drops it into the bag. Right? I say, amused by the grease around her mouth. I pause. So, what's it like being the daughter of a tyrant? My question doesn't seem to shock her. I don't know. What's it like working for one? She replies, arching a brow. I clear my throat. It just surprises me that you would want to be a working musician. Are you supposed to rebel against your father? Become like a doctor or something? My father hates that I want to be a musician, she admits. He sees them as the bottom of the food chain. No offense. I give her a crooked smile and a thumbs up supporting her claim. She continues with a sigh. It's like I'm an extension of him, rather than my own person. Sometimes I feel like a ghost, a guest in somebody else's life. I'm thinking about how Mr. Robson gave me a chance. I can't imagine where my life would be if he hadn't mentored me. And even though Lael and I grew up on different sides of the tracks, I can see we have some things in common. Most obviously, we're trapped under the spell of Ronald Ramsey. She's bound by blood, and I'm bound by legal contract. Honestly, I'm not sure which is easier to break free from. And yet, I know she's sincere about being a musician. I can feel her youthful drive. I know what she's feeling by the way she's looking at the empty stage in front of us. Only time I can be the person I need to be is when I'm on stage, she says. That's when I'm in control. I can self-destruct or I can shine. I finished chewing before saying, self-destruction is very 90s. I would shine if I were you. I was born in the late 90s, so I guess I missed that stuff, she says with a shrug. I imagine how Mr. Robson might react to Lael if he were with us. He would have done everything he could to encourage her. Suddenly, I feel the weight of responsibility, as if Mr. Robson is standing over my shoulder. I know what I have to do. All right, young lady, I say to her, as she scrunches up her nose at my choice of words. Why don't you come for an audition? I won't tell Switch or Calvi who you are. You'll just be another bass player auditioning. And I'll go with whatever they say. That way, this has nothing to do with your father. It's based on your talent. It's what's fair for all of us. A smile slowly crosses Lael's face, her eyes still looking at the stage. In an easy, confident voice, she says, I can do that.
Change the rhythm, the rain is gone. The sun is up in the gloomy, suffering days are behind us. The cool night shivers are gone. Under the sun again. Under the sun again. We need a summer love song. Just a summer love song. There's a heat wave making its way through me. I need someone who wants to fall madly in love. Just love me for the next 90 days, and we'll see how it plays. Under the sun again. We need a summer love song. We need a summer love song. See you walking around, those old faces haven't seen you around. How you been made this far? Gotta make some memories, but under the sun again, alright. I found another, she crossed my path in a valiant way. I asked if she would worship the flame, and the fire that burns in the sky is the fire that runs in my veins. Under the sun again. We need a summer love song. We need a summer